Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Chris Fabian, and I'll be presenting on our budgeting solution and a lot of progress we've made probably since the last time we presented on this. I do have the chat open, so if you have questions along the way, please go ahead and enter them in the chat, and I'll try to keep up as best as possible. Just a couple of other things. This year is off to a really great start. Hopefully it is on your end as well. Like I think it was just last week, we presented our annual impact report. So if you were unable to join us for that, but interested in what is being accomplished in the priority-based budgeting community of implementers, last week was our big celebration of all that took place over the course of the last year. So it's on our website, and the recorded video presentation is out there as well. So in addition to the impact report, we have formed our board. And if you did not see the news from our press release, Jane Brodigam joined our board. Jane is a former city manager of the city of Boulder, Colorado, also one of our very first implementers. And most recently, she was president of ICMA. And so Jane enthusiastically has joined the team and will be advising us on ways that we can continue to improve and inform our product roadmap for this year and beyond. So very excited to see Jane on the team as well. So today's presentation is about a really critical piece of functionality that has been years in the making, and it is budget development functionality in online priority-based budgeting. For those of you who have been around for quite some time in the PBB community, I think you will appreciate that priority-based budgeting assembles a data set that absolutely informs the budget. As departments are making budget requests, the PBB data is there to help analyze or assess, are the budget requests coming from departments really in line with our results? Are they things that we should really consider? How would we differentiate one budget request from another? But up until early last year, we didn't have the actual functionality for departments to come into the portal and create budget requests. The city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania was the first early last year to test out some functionality that we had put together. And they had quite a successful journey. We learned from that experience, and now in our brand new software platform that we began to roll out last fall, we have just started to release some of the latest budget functionalities. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I realize in our audience, we have current implementers of priority-based budgeting, as well as newcomers to this entire methodology and approach. For the newcomers, I'm going to be at times using vocabulary and lingo that is totally familiar to the PBB implementers. I will try to stop along the way and give some context and explanation. And then towards the very end of today's presentation, I will take some time to actually go through some of the first principle elements of priority-based budgeting, how this all comes together so that you'll have a complete picture. But for example, I'll be talking about programs and services and scores relative to results. That's the core component of priority-based budgeting data that we put together. We score programs and then ultimately can see an overall relevance differentiation, what we call quartiles. And so I'll use some of these words today. And again, I'll explain them a little bit later towards the end. So I'm just going to kick off with a little bit of explanation of how we came to develop our budgeting approach. And then we'll get into the tools very quickly here and offer some demonstration. So again, please don't hesitate to connect in the chat, but we'll get underway. So what I'm showing on the screen is actually a snapshot of data from one of our clients, and it's from the priority-based budgeting tools. And it's depicting 1 year to the next in terms of changes in budget at a line item level. So over here on the left-hand side, you can see non-personnel line items such as supplies and books and magazine subscriptions and software, professional and consulting services. And if you added them all up, it's 32,000 and then some. And then we move over to the right-hand side and you see those same line items overall. And this is what the budget process usually looks like for many local governments. Is from one year to the next, a department will go through each and every line item they have. They'll assess if their base budget is working for them or not. They'll offer up some reallocations. Some line items will increase, some will decrease, and you'll have some sort of net delta. In this case, the line item budget is going down by a certain amount of money. But what's awfully difficult to ascertain from this picture is whether or not this was a good decision for this organization as they moved from one year to the next. Sure, you can look and see, well, office supplies went from $1,000 to $820. That seems like we might have saved some money, but is that true? We're not quite sure what the context is. We see software maintenance went up. We see professional and consulting services went up, and so on and so forth. It's like the forest from the trees type of situation where you can't quite tell what's happening, if it was a good decision or a bad decision. And that's where we often find ourselves in the budget process. This is where, as a department submits their annual line item budget, a city manager or a budget officer then has to come in and say, let's start interviewing the department to figure out what in the world they're recommending, and then try to add context to whether or not these recommendations are solid. We can also layer in personnel into this storyline and this picture and see what's going on from one year to the next. In this case, FTE have gone from 1.2 to 0.95. And again, you hope that they're making a good decision, but it's awfully difficult to tell. The key piece of information that allows us all to have an aha moment and the light bulb appear over our heads is what I've just dropped in. And that is the rest of the story, that this is payroll processing. This is a program being offered in one of the cities who implements priority-based budgeting. And if we had started here, if we knew, oh, this is the finance department and it's within accounting and the program is processing payroll, and within processing payroll, we're doing without one of our FTE who went vacant, but we've achieved a program efficiency. We don't need to fill that position. And furthermore, we're finding other efficiencies at the non-personnel level. If we had started the conversation not at the line item level, but from the program perspective, the rest of the line items really help tell the story. So what we'll get into in our design of developing a program-centric budget is that we're not abandoning line items. They do fill out the rest of the context that we wish to know. It's just we need to lead with programs first, not line items first. And then we can really begin to understand what is being recommended in the budget process. And furthermore, how cool is it that we can start to see a trend at the programmatic level to see what's taking place with payroll processing from 2018 to 2019 to 2020 and beyond. From this exact same organization, as you can see here, this is Littleton, Colorado. We've been seeing Littleton put together their budget process, much like the city of Fort Saskatchewan in Alberta, who I know is represented on this call, as well as Rowlett, Texas. These are some of the leading organizations who we have seen who are taking their priority-based budgeting data, informing the budget process, and then reporting on it within the budget book. This is a page from Littleton's budget book, as they're trying to describe to executive leadership as well as elected leadership what the budget recommendations are all about. And this is what we want. This is what we're trying to create. And so thank you, Littleton, for helping lead the way. And thank you, Fort Sask, and thank you, Rowlett. You take a program, and that's the highlight. That's the main character in this story. And here in this case, it's payroll processing. And yes, we do want to document what's taking place at the line item level that accounts for the budget change that's being recommended. But we also long for the rest of the story. Tell me more about, where does payroll processing fit in? In priority-based budgeting vocabulary and lingo, we come to find out it's a quartile 1 program, which to all of you who are brand new to this, that means it ranks the highest possible in terms of payroll processing's score or relevance to outcomes that matter to the city of Littleton. We can see the rest of the information that oftentimes gets asked in council meetings. Hey, is this program mandated? Is that justification for the type of budget request that we're looking at? Here we can see that how this program scored from a mandate perspective, from a partnership or reliance perspective, cost recovery, change in demand, and so on. You wish that you have all of this information brought to bear when we're taking a look at that delta that takes place and is being recommended in the budget process overall. For this particular example, back to a concept in PBB that we use the PBB blueprint to talk about what is the intention or the intended future for any particular program. We find out that yes, the costs are being proposed to go down. It's not a service level decrease. It's actually the same level of service, but provided with less resources, which is the definition of a program efficiency. And that's really helpful because if we're looking at a high priority program, part of the ground rules in PBB is, we may not wish to lower the level of service for a program that relates so highly to the results we're trying to achieve. But if it's doing the same program for not as many resources overall, then that's a great recommendation. So everything I'm documenting here on the screen compared to where we started, just line items from one year compared to line items to the next, this is the comprehensive, rich storyline that we want everybody to be able to see as they're going through the budget process overall. Now, the idea of developing a budget at the program level with the associated line items, this is definitely not new. Program budgeting has been a concept that's been around for quite some time. I'm showing you a screen capture of a paper that Shane Kavanaugh and I wrote back in 2015. This is like 7 years ago when this paper came out. And in this article, you can see exactly why program budgeting or budgeting from a program-centric point of view is so useful for transparency, being able to see where the trade-offs are really taking place. Are we talking about service level increases? Are we talking about service level decreases, program efficiencies, partnership opportunities, revenue enhancements overall? The programs really help everybody be able to make much more sense of the line item data. The problem all along has been that our systems and our tools were behind to accommodate how to develop a program budget. We've been held back by limitations in how we use our chart of accounts or general ledger, or our ERP just doesn't really support getting to a program level. We only have so many fields in the tools that we can use. And so that's why in priority-based budgeting, we're trying to kind of hover above that core financial system, but it was high time that we needed to develop a budget development set of functionality in the tools. I did mention City of Fort Saskatchewan. This is their 2021 budget. They just have, I believe it's on their website now. I could update my slides. Their 2022 approved budget. But in Fort Sask, they have been doing the same kind of thing that we have applauded in their use of priority-based budgeting. But you can see for any given department, like utilities, they're listing out the program inventory and they're demonstrating from one year to the next the delta in budget at a program level so that council discussions can stay there where we can say, what's happening with the adjustment in cemetery operations, or what's happening in our approach to tree and shrub maintenance. Those are programs. We can talk about the impact of those programs on outcomes. We can discuss whether they're mandated or not. And we can really drill down and find out where those line item changes are taking place. From what we've learned from the team in Fort Sask, oftentimes in order to get the budget request back to this program level, there's been a lot of forensic analysis to really tie everything back. And so that's what we've really hoped to be able to change if we centered the budget development process in the first place with the program data backed up by all the line item information. As a department is making a request at the line item level within a particular program, the whole system will be connected. We won't have to do forensic analysis to verify where the line item changes are impacting these programs, it should be contained within the system, communicated from the department themselves. And that's exactly what we've endeavored to do. So one more point on all of this, we are working with both ICMA and GFOA on how to bring this program-centric budgeting effort to life, tying programs to your strategic outcomes. That has been something we have been working on for quite some time, but it's the budget development process itself, a contained system that on the left-hand side, you see we're rolling out, starting in June, a credential on how to do this called 21st Century Budgeting with ICMA, which is absolutely thrilling to see that association move in such a direction. And we're very proud to be a partner with them and helping them execute this plan. And over on the right-hand side, with GFOA, if you've been watching their Rethinking Budgeting initiative overall, they're trying to break it down to say, look, the line items are really helpful for establishing spending control and analyzing variances at any given line item level, comparing budget to actuals and so on. But when we really think about what a budget needs to do for us now and in the future, the line item approach is just falling short of helping decision makers know what all of our options are for resource reallocation, freeing up resources in order to fund emerging priorities. And so we've been contributing actively to the Rethinking Budgeting efforts. And our next step with GFOA, which there will be some presentations coming down the pipeline here, we'll be talking about how a shift from the line item decision-making unit to a program decision-making unit within the budget process is the key, simple, practical breakthrough step that we need to make sure that our resources are as aligned with results as they possibly can be. And that's the business that we're in. Okay, well, let me toggle out of the slides, and that being just a little bit of intro. And I'll minimize my slides. We can come back to them. But I do want to get into some of the tools here. And I'm going to use, thanks, Eric, for dropping that in on the Rethinking Budgeting campaign. I've got a couple different windows. Okay, so if you have been following since our grand reveal at our annual conference last year, we have opened up our new software platform for priority-based budgeting, which contains, I'll bounce around over here, all of our known aspects of PBB, where program inventory is being created, program costs, where we're taking the line item budgets and associating them with our programs, and program scoring, our insights portal, where we're able to add recommendations to specific programs. But what we've opened up here in action is a budget request portal. So picture where this fits in. This is where you've now created your priority-based budgeting data, you have your program inventory, you have your line items associated, and you have program scores, and your organization is about to open up the budget process itself, inviting departments to come and consider their budget and ask for new personnel requests on the operating side and any other specific non-personnel line items. So I'm actually showing you some live data here in Flagstaff. And as you're looking, we're able to see from a program perspective or a line item perspective, the summary of the budget requests that have been submitted to date. So here, I'm looking across the organization. I think we have over 400 budget requests that have been submitted for any given program that has been identified. We know the total cost of the program as calculated in priority-based budgeting. At the summary level, what is the requested amount that's coming through for consideration? This is where they are in their process right now. And then therefore, what is the proposed change to that program cost? And this could be filterable, of course, for any given department. We could filter it by any given department within any of their accounting funds. So if we just wanted to talk about budget requests that are having an impact on the general fund, we can subset just to look at those particular requests. We can subset this on any of our scoring criteria. So if we wanted to look at any budget requests submitted from a given department within the general fund that are mandated or not mandated, or that impact a specific result to some level. And then last but not least, how about those budget requests in terms of their overall relevance to the results that Flagstaff is trying to achieve? So again, quartile 1 and quartile 2 being those programs that score really highly in the PBB scoring process. Quartile 3 and quartile 4 simply being programs that scored less well. And that is exactly the kind of information we want as we're going through these budget deliberations, to be able to easily ask the department a question. Hey, this budget request appears to be quartile 4. It doesn't have as much to do with our results. And let's just go ahead and look at those for a second. So now we're seeing all of the program specific requests across the city of Flagstaff that the program itself scores less highly to their results. These are quartile 4. I could subset on general fund specific. None of those were in general fund. That's actually possibly a good thing. I could look at from a attribute perspective, are any of these low quartile and scoring low on mandate? Yep, we have a bunch of those. Are any of these offered by a different entity? So now we're getting smaller and smaller. Are any of these programs not even recovering their costs? Okay, so these are subsidized by general government resources. Are any of these programs actually experiencing a decrease in demand? Yes. And are any of these programs serving a smaller portion of our population? Of the 400 total requests, you can see this is just about 15 or so. It's a very small number, but how fascinating. This is exactly what Flagstaff, thank you for indulging me. This is exactly what Flagstaff will be doing as their budget department starts to meet with departments in just a couple of weeks. The budget department can bring this up on the screen to be able to say, we now have a summary of all the requests that are coming in. And please help us understand a little bit better, what is the background for a request that you're putting on the table that has less to do with achieving our results, not mandated, so on and so forth. Are we sure that this is a budget request that we really want to take into consideration? So that is exactly how they are going to step through their process. Let me undo some of these filters here for just a second. And I want to explain a couple other things that you're seeing here on the screen. What I've been demonstrating here, these are the programs themselves and the recommended budget increase or decrease. There's some reallocations here as well. Note that I can also look at line item specific requests. And this will make, I'm going to do a demo of how to create budget requests here in just a moment. But from the department point of view, the departments had to think through their budget requests they're about to make. And their mindset was, if I'm going to ask for a new FTE, I need to start with the program that the person is going to be serving. That would be a program request. Or if I'm thinking about a non-personnel line item, I could start from a program request and say, I am going to ask for more professional services, like we saw in that initial example in my slides. And they could consider that from the program first perspective, or they could consider it from a line item first perspective. But even for any line item request, that's what I'm trying to show you right here, they still had to take the line item and indicate towards what program is this line item currently allocated, and then what is the delta, the requested amount. So as you're looking through here at travel, lodging and meals, registration, overtime, ammunition and related supplies, these are line items in their budget tied through their PBB work to one or more programs by way of the allocations they go through. And as they're showing up here on the summary screen, you're able to see for communications equipment, for example, it's being tied to their emergency and non-emergency uniformed response. body cameras, tasers, equipment, and so on. We can see the total cost of the current program, the large request for this line item increase, and therefore the total new request of this line item that's taking place. So this is pretty neat to be able to see this right now. They're just kind of going through and seeing all of the requests as they're coming through. There is a, on the back end, as the budget department and city manager's office start to meet with departments to really start taking a look at what they're going to approve or deny, these charts will start to populate as they select any given budget request and approve it or deny it overall. But here I've just clicked into one again, just to show you what is included. This is a program level recommendation, business incubation and acceleration support overall from business support and services. As you look through how it's been currently costed out from a personnel and non-personnel perspective, you see the current staffing. These are 4 staff members allocated currently at a certain percentage. It just so happens that this request is about electricity costs. It has nothing to do with personnel. So we're seeing no recommended changes or requests from a personnel perspective. But here is that line item for electricity. Here's the current cost. Here's the brand new request of an additional $10,000. And that's what's being proposed in grand summary for this particular program, backed out to a line item level. So if you look at this for just one moment, and again, I'm going to take one step back here in a second and show you how these requests come together. I think what's really profound is that we're still seeing the personnel and the non-personnel down to the line item level. They're now contained within a program, and all of the budget requests are taking place so that we can ask the question, is this electricity increase for incubation and acceleration business support something we want to consider? Well, tell me more. Now bringing to bear all of the rest of your priority-based budgeting data, just like we saw in payroll processing earlier. What is this program? How does it score relative to results? Is it quartile 1? Is this particular budget request worthwhile to consider? That's the budget approval process that's just about to happen in Flagstaff. Well, cool. I want to go back. I have just shown you from a summary level how this begins to come together. But let's get into creating requests so you can see how they got to the point that they are with 400 and then some programmatic and line item requests that they're about to evaluate. So as a department comes into this effort, they are looking at all of their particular programs in the program inventory. That's what they're confronted with. And they, again, as they're thinking about the requests they're about to make, I could say, I know what program this increase or reallocation is about to impact, so I can start at a program first. Or if I wanted to think it through from the line item perspective first, I could toggle over to my line items, see how that current line item is currently associated with various programs and services, and then say, I'm going to ask for an increase here for registration, and I'm going to describe that increase as it pertains to the programs that it's impacting overall. So that's really neat, is that ability to start from one place or the other. But again, bottom line, even if they start from a line item, it's contained within the programs, therefore allowing all of the other attachments to programs that we have in priority-based budgeting. From a program perspective, here as I click misdemeanor prosecutions, first on the list, what you see has just appeared are numerous other budget requests that are currently proposed for misdemeanor prosecutions, each with a different intent. If I just opened up one of these, I can see this is the path that the departments take as they're assembling these requests. Here is travel expenses that they're thinking of asking for. And I'll do a fake one here in just a second, but looking at a real one, we can see several customized questions that Flagstaff has asked. Does this program request impact the program service level? They chose yes, it enhances the service level. These are customizable. Is this a new funding request or a base budget reallocation? This is new. In Flagstaff's situation, they allow for reallocation at the line item level, but they still want to track it and understand what is the intent of the reallocation that's taking place. These are, if it's a base budget reallocation, they're almost all automatically approved. But back to team at Fort Sask, this is where we can at least tag it to understand better what is the nature of the request coming forward. And then they also wanted to know, is this an ongoing recurring request, or is it one time in nature overall? Since this was a non-personnel request, I'm going to unclick personnel, and just move to the non-personnel current allocation, so we can hopefully see these are all of the line items that are currently allocated at some percentage to this program, misdemeanor prosecutions. And as I scroll down, I can see quite simply what the department did is they said, here's my travel, lodging, and meals line item. And I am asking for $2,500 additional. So just like the department would have gone through in their line item request, but now I see very specifically what this request is for, what program it belongs to. And if I went back again, I see what is the nature of the request. So even something as basic as asking for $2,500 for travel is now contained with all of the rest of the PBB data brought to life. Well, let me go back and I'm going to show you how to build a request. I'll build one and then we'll erase it for Team Flagstaff so they don't see my crazy budget request coming through. But let's stick here with misdemeanor prosecutions while we're looking at it. If I wanted to look at how it's currently funded, I click to see all of the non-personnel that are allocated. This we just looked at a moment ago. I can see my staffing for that particular program. So I'm bringing to the forefront what we've worked on in PBB. I moved to create a brand new request, and I'll for this one say Chris Fabian's test request, increasing the service level. Great. I mentioned that we have some questions that are customizable. These you might recognize as your departments go through and create business cases. I'll show you where these are located in the tools in just a moment, but we have the request purpose, which allows you to customize how these questions come across. So this is how Flagstaff wanted it. So I might say this enhances the service level. Of course it does. This is a new funding request, and this is recurring. Sorry, this is coming off. I can enlarge my screen a little bit. If I was asking for people, I get a different screen of the current personnel allocations. If I'm not asking for anything personnel related, I would uncheck this box and I can skip that step. I'll ask for personnel just so I can show you how this works. And I move to the current personnel allocations towards misdemeanor prosecutions overall. So I can see these are all my staff members. These are their total compensation. Here are their allocations. Here's the resulting cost of this person allocated to this particular program overall. And now I have nothing going on for requests or new program costs. I can add a person and mimic any of the current people who I already have. So let's say I was adding another admin specialist. I can simply copy that current admin specialist and ask for a brand new one. We can also add from scratch. I can also alter that person's title if I wanted that to come through. I could add from scratch, meaning the person that I want to recommend has nothing to do with my current staffing. It's a brand new type of position. And if I add from scratch, I get some new prompts for the type of information I need to add. So I'm going to stick with a simple one and not add from scratch. I'll do the admin specialist zone 1. Everything is automatically populated because the tool is saying, hey, I'm guessing this is the type of person that you want to add. Their salary, as it's currently been approved in our personnel system, is $49,000. I might say, hey, I've talked with HR and I know this person is going to be allocated at a little bit higher level. I could add multiple people. if I wanted to, in this particular request, different job titles and different positions overall. I'm just going to hit the trash can there and just show you one simple example as we go. And as I hit add, what you see here for my new programmatic request is here is this brand new person. Here's the request that's coming through from a personnel perspective. And that's what's going to show up in the summary. I'll hit next. And as I hit next, I move to the non-personnel side of things. Again, if I'm adding new non-personnel line items, I can go ahead and look at postage and freight. Here, I'm going to add some new costs. Let's go to $5,000, for example. But same premise overall. I can add brand new line items. I can make adjustments to my current line items already, and I can edit in terms of resource reallocation within this particular program as well. In my earlier payroll processing example, as they were showing, maybe office supplies is going down, I could edit office supplies, reduce the cost from $402 to something less in order to demonstrate how I'm adding to postage and freight here for my additional $5,000. As I click next, I get a quick summary of this particular request that I'm about to submit. And you see a nice before and after. This is my 55,000. This is my brand new position that I just tried to add. So I, as a department, get to visualize how this request is going to be coming across. I see that my personnel costs are going up in general. My non-personnel costs are going up. It is a quartile 3 program. I see how this program scored against all of my other result areas. This is looking good. If I've miscommunicated, I can go back and adjust those allocations, but I think I'll give it the blessing. And then the next step overall, again, to some additional narrative questions that Flagstaff has entered into their tool. Here I have the opportunity to, in an open-ended text box, give a little bit more description to what I'm asking for. So in Flagstaff's case, I'll just read you a couple. Could other positions be removed, organized, or repurposed to fill this request? I would say nope. Could you contract or outsource this work? Haven't explored this one, and so on and so forth. In Flagstaff's case, they have a carbon neutrality plan. And for specific strategies, they wanted the department to come through and identify, does this request tie to their overall climate action goals and carbon neutrality plan overall? And finally, I can move towards either skipping this section and filling it in later or saving it entirely. I'll go ahead and hit skip and fill in later. And now my new budget request has been created at the program level. And if I go back to any of those summary screens, I should be able to see that particular request for misdemeanor prosecutions. Let's go ahead and click it. Here's Chris's test request, increasing the service level. I'm going to go ahead and delete it while we're here so we don't throw anybody off in Team Flagstaff. That's how to create a program specific request. Again, where my mindset is we have to help our departments make this process easy, number one. And number two, as they're starting to mentally think through what they're asking for, we're just tying it all back to the programs within priority-based budgeting to center their overall recommendation. Let me show you from a line item request perspective just really quickly. So the idea here and why we designed it this way, take something like electricity. And in priority-based budgeting, some of those non-personnel line items are spread across multiple programs. Here's copying and printing. That's another example. I'm going to subset on just non-personnel as we're looking here. So back to the approach to our design, we get it that if all we had were program requests, and that line item for electricity or advertising was tied to 5 or 10 or 15 programs across the department, they did an allocation across multiple programs, then that department, if they wanted to simply express, hey, I think energy is going up by 3%, they would have had to go through all of those 10 programs and manually increase every line item by that 3%, which works. That's a good way to do it. But we thought about it in the opposite way to say, well, why don't we just bring up the line items that, the programs that the line item is currently allocated to. And therefore, if my registration fees are going up, for example, I can create my new request and I can create that request while looking at both of the programs that this line item is currently attached to. So here, again, I'll do a Chris test. I would usually include a very nice example, and I'll show you an example of a report here in just a moment. I would go through and answer these questions overall. And now, as I'm looking at the current allocation of this line item to 2 programs in community development and engineering, it's currently allocated split 50-50 to engineering plan and permit review and traffic systems management. One thing I can do is come in and say, I want to make a change. Here's engineering plan and permit review. If this line item had been allocated to 10 different programs and I just want to make a change between 2 of them, that's why we're allowed to select only the specific programs that we wanted to impact. This is dynamic, so I can say, I'm actually going to bring this down to 10%, and I'm going to bring this up to, let's see if we can go to 100%. Maybe I'm going to even go beyond that. Well, let's just keep it to 100. Let's do 90. I make my save, and I can see this is the new request overall that I'm about to recommend. So I've done a decreased allocation down to 10% towards one program and an increased allocation towards another program overall. And I would move through the exact same process to answer some questions. The summary page for line item requests is kind of neat. Now I'm seeing that specific line item as it used to be allocated to traffic systems maintenance, and now how I'm proposing it's allocated. And I can see that line item from how it used to be here, and now I've done the resource decrease in allocation. So that's definitely pretty cool. And as the department just continues along the way, they are then confronted with these same questions to fill out, because I still need to provide that full explanation for what is the nature of the request that I'm making. I did want to show you within the request purpose portal, this is where I was describing that those questions are customizable that you want the departments to answer. So what we call the box choices, the minimum information, you could add more questions overall. These are how Flagstaff designed theirs, with multiple selections in the box overall. If they had more box choices, I want to maintain services, enhance, decrease, or eliminate, outsource, or something like that, if I could spell. This is exactly where they would include that box choice, and now it would appear as the departments go through and create their requests. But I'll go ahead and delete that choice. Cool. Well, I'll come back and delete it. And then for additional narrative questions, this is where you saw those open-ended text boxes that the departments are going through and filling in those answers overall. These are all customizable as well. So again, those of you who have a normal business case process and you want departments to be able to add narrative to what they're describing, this is how it would all come together in real life. So it's pretty exciting to see as this is rolling out right now. I did want to show you, so as an output, Pittsburgh, as I mentioned, was the very first to go through this. And we have several different exports and PDFs in progress right now for any of you who are thinking about doing this. We are taking inspiration again from Littleton, from Fort Sask, and from Rowlett for how their reports came out of the tools. But this is an example in Pittsburgh where the departments are meeting with the budget director. They're having those discussions about all of the requests that have been submitted. So if I was Bureau of Animal Care and Control, you can see here they have 3 different budget requests that have come forward. This is a table of contents, each of them with their description. If I was having a meeting with EMS, here are their requests. Some are personnel related, like the district chief. Some are non-personnel related. Here's fire. The report can come down specific to one department or another. And I'm just going to fast forward here past some large table of contents to see, okay, so here is the Bureau of Animal Care and Control. We get a quick snapshot if I'm reading ahead on what the nature of the request is all about. Here are their 3 requests overall. And as I scroll through each one of them, all that's happening is we're exporting the answers to the questions that we just asked in the portal so that we have our intelligence report as we're asking the department, hey, what's the nature of the request? How did you answer the questions? And now we're going to move towards whether we approve the request or deny the request in the budget process overall. So just wanted to show you an example of some of the output that we're looking at. And probably in a subsequent presentation, we'll show you back to like the Littleton payroll processing report, exactly what we're trying to build to mimic that. And also the Fort Sask departmental program by program output. What are the changes as we were observing here from our overall summary page? That is something that we're hoping to export in PDF, and all for the purpose of helping in that budget approval process to say, what are the requests that we're going to approve? What are the requests that we're going to deny? And sorry, this is just popping up here. And then the final thing I wanted to say, and then I'll take a breather here and make sure that I'm not missing any questions, is that after these requests are approved or denied, and we've balanced the budget within the general fund for what we can afford to do, and we've moved all of the requests into one stage or another, finally, at the end of the day, whoops, this is today's attendance. At the end of all of this work, while understanding the requests at the program level helps us to approve or deny a specific request, after all is said and done, we need to export it all back out, back down to the line item level, so we can see what is the budget that we've just approved. So here, this is Pittsburgh. From their export, we see the current base budget amount for any given line item that was included in priority-based budgeting. We see that request, like we were just looking at electricity and so on. When they approve it, we'll get the summary of what's been approved and what the new line item total will be for workforce training, for computer maintenance, for office supplies, and so on. And that is what becomes of your non-personnel and approved personnel costs overall. So hopefully that point is clear, recognizing full well that the priority-based budgeting information is there to put the budget request into context. What program does it belong to? What outcomes is that program helping us to achieve by way of this budget request? We approve it, we deny it, we balance the budget, we can report on it, and we export back out the now recommended budget back to the line item level overall. And that is the main point I wanted to land on. And we'll go back to summary of requests where we started. And this might even make more sense now, but you're seeing the complete summary of all programs, the total current cost of the programs, which is derived from the personnel and non-personnel cost allocation. We see the budget request, and we see the proposed total cost back to that program level. How about Fort Sask team? You have been through this work using your methods. How does this come across to you in terms of how the budget process is still using the line item data, knowing that you've done so much of the forensic analysis to attach those requests back to programs? Does this make sense for how we're trying to contain it to save you that component of work?
I think so. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but what I envision this doing is this becomes our request instead of in Word, but then we're able to attach all of the program data to it and make it more in a database and more user-friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Unless Marley has anything else to say.
No, I think that's a good, I'm still also just trying to like figure out in our process how this would all fit in, but I'm envisioning the same thing. I think it would just be then also figuring out once we export our line items, how we get that to our reporting system overall, just so we can create, you know, our income statements and whatnot, because I didn't see anything like that in here. But I definitely think from a process perspective, doing this at the beginning, because normally we do this sort of at the end of our process, which is a little bit backwards. Yes. I am super excited about it. I think it looks really cool.
Thanks, Marley. And for everybody else to make the parenthetical on what she just said, most even PBB organizations, before we had budget development capabilities, would still actually make the recommendations for the budget. From, if I was a department, I'm asking for more budget, it would still take place at a line item level. We would then take the new line items, put them back into PBB software, realign them back with programs to make sense of what that request was all about. This is, I think, the proper order, which is tell us where your line item change is impacting the program first. And so departments will never have to start with a simple line item budget request like Fort Sask is talking about that takes place in Word. All of the requests will take place at the program level every single year. And we just export the recommended budget back to line items. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that, Shannon, Marley. Robert, I did see that you're on the line, and Melody too. Just kind of looking up to see those of you who have been in this for a while. Robert or Melody, how is this coming across to you from the perspective of building budgets?
Hi, this is Melody. I really like the tool and the concept. I think the piece that I would have to maybe like play around with or see a little more would be the base budget piece, because we currently have our base budget adjustments built into our budget request system, but they don't necessarily have to be a request. So if you're not changing the amount of your base budget and just moving it around, you kind of showed how you could do that, but I think I would need to see that side of it a little more.
Sure. Totally appreciate that. And what Flagstaff's idea was making sure that it's known for every budget request that's created. Is it a new request or is it a base budget reallocation? So as we were looking at this particular program, this is that question. Is this a new funding request or a base budget reallocation? So they're at least tagging it. Is this new or base budget reallocation? And then as they go through that effort, let's say it was non-personnel, the idea is that if it's a base budget reallocation, all I can do is either edit my current line items within this program and say, I'm going to zero out postage and freight, and I'm going to add more to office supplies here. That's the base budget reallocation, or it's asking for new.
Okay, yeah, that looks great. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Let's just zero out postage and freight because it's so fun.
Hey, Chris. Yeah, Robert. And I'm going to mirror both of the previous comments both ways. The one part that I still like to see is the export back, of course, into the EFS. right? We do all this data in PBB, and then how do we do have to get the line items back into the EFS system. So that's the one big thing that's still missing from this demonstration so far. And then the other point was, we just had our budget kickoff, and that's the first thing that came up was the difference between making programmatic changes and the entirely separate process, which is the holdover process of the line item reallocations that all the departments want to do. They want to go in and move training to food, or registration to office supplies, or whatever else they want to do. And of course, every time they do that, well, not every time, but a lot of times it will change program costs. So they have to understand that it's a program cost. And so they're allowed to do it. So it's interesting that we still sort of have to have them do the allocation at the program level, even if it's a line item level, because it does impact those programs. So that's the extra step, I guess. That was interesting to see.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Loving the feedback. So a couple of thoughts. So one, this is back to Melody's. I'm showing a base budget reallocation here where I'm zeroing out postage and freight. So the new line item cost for postage and freight for this particular program is brought down to 0. And if I wanted to increase something else, I certainly could to see the overall delta. But I think the question that you're both asking is, so at some point in this process, we need to see the export of what becomes of postage and freight in total, 001, yada, yada. And that is what I was trying to demonstrate as an export. All of the information, even though we're in the tools, wrapping it around programs, we still are exporting your entire line item budget back out. So here are the objects, the current base budget, the requested, if it's a change up or if it's a change down, to make for your 2023 recommended budget back to a line item level. So everything still has to come back out at the line item level based on what gets approved or denied in the tools. So even if I could bring up one more, and I know we're right at the end of the time. So tell you what, if anybody's going to stick around, you can, and we'll stick around for just maybe a couple more minutes. But for any follow-up questions that you have as well, our hope is, especially for all the current priority-based budgeting community, if you're intending to try to budget this way, we can talk about how this looks with your data, what your budget timeline looks like when you would open this up for departments. So please reach out to your customer success team representative, or to any of us on this call. And are you going to share this presentation after so we can share? Yeah, absolutely, Melody. And I know you're on a calendar year budget. So if you're interested in going into this a little bit more deeply, we should set up just some additional time just to walk it through even further. But we'll share the recorded presentation and the slides for sure. If you're new to PBB, the only prerequisite is building your program inventory, which is the rest of what the tools do. So we could talk to you further about how do you get started? How do you build your program inventory, your program costs, and your scores in the first place to set you up with that data set that will lead you to be able to budget from the program level overall. Cool. Thanks a lot, Liz, for sharing that. And the last thing that I was going to try to show, let's just go to business attraction here. This is a current request. So again, what you're seeing, this is a program, business attraction. The request is replenish funds for sustainable automotive sales tax rebate program. Fascinating. The request is actually at the other miscellaneous services line item level for $5,000. If I deny this, then this line item for other miscellaneous services will remain at the base amount. If I approve this request, then the request moves towards $5,000 in addition to how it has been stated. So let me show you in the export. These are the requested amounts. Here's the current base budget. And for the approved component, if I am clicking the green checkbox for any of my approved budget requests, we would see the sum of the current budget plus any additional requested towards the approved. And this is, I think, where Robert and where everybody has been kind of focused is how does this come back out to the line item basis overall. All right. Well, thanks everybody for sticking around even 5 minutes over. And please, again, stay in contact and we'll look forward to talking this further specifically with each of your organizations on your own budget timeline calendar and seeing what we can do. But we're thrilled that the functionality is here. We're rolling it out. So we're ready for you. And thanks again for tuning in.